this is not something that's going to have a short-term impact. It's going to have a medium to long-term impact. And my view would be that membership plan their prognosis. You cannot somehow think so far ahead, but you must understand that things are changing every day. A decision that possibly you made last week, you may be altering it this week, and it's absolutely acceptable in these circumstances. But you should, in the event of restricted movement, in the event of a lockdown, in the event of the next 3 months, there are certain things in which you're going to have to be very brutal in managing in respect of your expenses and what that you can eliminate totality and what you need in order to continue. But the most important thing, as you do your prognosis, and say, well, I need to change it, and you should be able to change it every so often or every other week. It's important to be sitting very, very with your close management teams, to be reviewing the progress on a much shorter cycle, to understand where your business has been, what it performed like, and then what further measures or interventions you need to take. As the government wakes up every day and does new interventions, some of which we are unable to foresee, I think we need to be behaving and reacting with the worst case scenarios at hand. And then how do we stretch that out to the point in which we can say, can we survive through this for the next 1 year? I do believe it's going to have much, much larger impacts to businesses and to supply chains than maybe some of us are anticipating. Our view at CAM is we must try and remain open. We do everything behind the scenes. We spend a lot of time lobbying the board of directors, the chairman, the CEO, Phyllis. They spend most of their days these days going back and forth and trying to find ways in which we can mitigate, we can put in new measures, interventions, and ultimately the goal is to stay open. What can we do to stay open, and what is it that you need to do in order to be responsible for allow that to happen? And some of the measures that the government has put in place in terms of PPEs and making sure we're wearing our masks, and these are all interventions in which the government will look forward, look back and see if we comply, it gives them more confidence to say that we can stay open. So we have a responsibility in order to make sure that that happens. There was the whole work that the CAM did with the Ministry of Industrialization in order to come together with a list of essential goods. And you can see that that list has been shared regularly with the membership. We've managed to expand that list. And as we look at more and more and understand and benchmark from other countries, we understand what our list should look like. But that's an essential list that would sort of take care of companies that would need to operate in a lockdown. And there's a lot of issues then within a lockdown, because a lot of facilities or infrastructure around that disappear with it. So I guess in a lockdown, it's quite clear that if you are a non-essential manufacturer, it'll be a lot harder for you to get a license to operate. However, in a restricted environment, it would not change the kind of protocols you will need within your manufacturing space, whether you're in a lockdown or outside of a lockdown. Because as we come out and we have a plan to reopen fully, we must accept that some of the new norms that we have are going to be things that we must carry forward. It cannot drop off the sides immediately we reopen. The government and CAM work very closely under the Business Emergency Response Committee in order to make sure that we can take in membership feedback to understand your unique scenarios. You can write directly through to us. We have seconded 2 members of staff into that, and we're taking direct feedback for specific scenarios that you may feel that don't necessarily get catered for under maybe a communication or the essential list. But if you go now, going back in, what will the government probably want to see as we reopen business? They expect Ministry of Health, expect some level of certification in order for you to stay open. Now, the first thing as owners, we need to be looking at our level of pandemic preparedness. And that would be, many of us have a PCP or a business continuity plan, some of us don't. And I think the first thing would be is to get a BCP up and running. This is not only dealing with the risk of a pandemic, but it deals with many other external and internal risks that your organization may face. But what we must do in our BCPs now is include pandemic as one of those major risks. Whilst they don't come so often, when they do come, they're devastating, both socially and to the economics and to the business. And so it's important that you develop a plan and a broad framework plan. And that plan is really so that you're looking both proactively and you're reacting and you're trying to minimize the risks, whether it's actual or potential, and those risks would be to your facilities, to your assets, and to your people. And then you sort of break down your plan into strategic actions and the levels of risk and how you would intervene in your organization based on the level in which the pandemic is unfolding. And a lot of the issues, I mean, once you write your pandemic preparedness plan, it's a document that would be able to refer back to and give you guideline and promptly react the next time we find ourselves in a situation. Many of us took a couple of weeks to react without having clear indicated plans on how to deal with a situation like this. And I think every day we find it new scenarios or new decisions that we take would have been done a lot quicker had we had some sort of planning in place. So definitely the pandemic preparedness document for your organizations clearly define the roles and responsibilities, who's in charge of what, create a control management team within that. So there's always a group of people meeting regularly, and then you've got your implementers on the ground who are taking it through. You can define it into low health risk, medium and high health risk, and what would you enact, what actions would you then take if you start triggering or raising your levels within your organization. And then how would you communicate, how would you report with these issues, and how would you then equip the organization in order to deal with it? Because then a lot of it means that you've got to alter the way you plan your alter the way you plan, the way you sit, the way your process flows go, the way your people are, and especially all the permutations and variables that COVID-19 have brought into our workplaces. It's really mean that we've had to rehash and rethink. But some of the key things that the Ministry of Health and the Occupational Health Department probably come in and look at is, have we implemented the guidelines that they had proposed? Because they could walk in and they find that we don't have it, then you really are most likely going to be refused to have a license to reopen. So we would like membership to take it extremely seriously. And what are those basic things that they were asking us to do? And we've got a couple of them. The first one, of course, is the hygiene. And the hygiene was, as you enter into organizations, both entry and exit, prepare yourselves to have wash hand stations, fully equipped, with soap and a place to dry, and to provide a sanitizer. So you have both options available for members coming in. Members coming in these days, anyone should be wearing a mask, whether coming in from the street, from their cars, coming into your workplace. They definitely need to be wearing a mask within that. Some of these are the basics that we would need within the thing. So we've got guidelines and personal guidelines, which we're happy to share in respect of personal hygiene and social etiquette within the workplace. It's your washing your hands, and it's all the advice that we all got early in the day from the WHO on how to deal with it. Visitors guidelines, when you have visitors and staff coming in, what are the guidelines? They don't change. You need to have a health screening processes that are coming in at the organization for employees as they come in. Health screening would be as a minimum taking temperature. So in addition to you're talking about your hygiene and washing hands, you've got temperature checks, you've got health declaration forms that are being filled in possibly once a week to ensure that they're covering things and asking the relevant and pertinent questions. Have you traveled, or have you been in touch with someone who's been sick? The key things that one could then isolate you and say that, are you a risk or not a risk? But it's important that you're recording them and keeping on record information to deal with the health of the employees within the organization. So you would want to extend also guidelines to health checking and screening even to visitors coming in. You'd want to also make sure that visitors that are non-essential, that you'd probably find other mechanisms and ways to communicate with them and only allow essential visitors to come in. When it comes to customers, we will be looking at how is it that we can have a controlled movement of customers coming in. Will it be done based on the size or the number of people that can serve them? Of course, at the same time, looking at the social distancing guidelines and ensuring that we comply to all of those. The guidelines for cleaning and disinfecting, I think those are very, very important. Organizations will have requirements now to ensure that they've got written guidelines to show how often they're cleaning common spaces, common touch points, door handles. You're talking about rails, you're talking about what customers commonly touch, and how many times per day are you disinfecting these work surfaces and spaces, your own employees' workstations. Have you segregated them? Have you created your spaces of 2 meters so that there is clear social distancing guidelines being practiced, and how often are they also cleaning and disinfecting their areas? The more you can inbuild an environment or a safe haven environment, it not only promotes the willingness of your staff to want to come to work, it also encourages your customers as they walk in that they're walking into a really safe and hygienic environment. And it's critical, because there's going to be a perception of your hygiene versus the employee, the customer's hygiene versus the business's hygiene. And if the customer perceives your hygiene levels to be low, they probably want to restrict themselves from coming into your workplace or into your business. So very, very important that you follow those particular guidelines. And I think when it comes to that, I think the other things that, like what Job mentioned, is that CAM is working closely with McKinsey and the government to come up with a set of guidelines on reopening manufacturing and really getting back to work the way we saw it. And what's going to be critical in all of these things, and if I'm looking at the basics around that thing, social distancing measures is going to be absolutely critical. You walk in, and when someone walks in, they're going to be able to see for sure that you're actually seeing what is going to be there. You've got issues around the sanitization, which I've already mentioned. And then, of course, one critical thing that will come up is, and I think it's causing a bit of confusion, is that if someone does, in a health screening, come up with a high temperature or has any of the symptoms, what do you do then? And one of the proposals, and of course right now will be guided, is to isolate the employee. And thereafter, when you isolate the employee, what are the protocols that you must do? So you would need an isolation room to be able to put them somewhere, and then we'd need to work with the Ministry of Health and get further guidelines on thereafter. How do we move an employee to a health clinic? Is it the Ministry of Health that's going to assist us in that last mile? How do we get them home? There's a lot of unanswered questions over here that we would probably need to all answer, that when you build your pandemic preparedness plan, is that, yes, now I have a situation, and how do I deal it? Then how do I deal with the other people that have been in contact with that particular member of staff? But what the message I'm trying to pass down through is that you need to have a document that clearly spells out your pandemic preparedness plan and have it written, so that when someone does come and ask you how prepared you are, you can actually show that you have your documents in place and you have your signage clearly all around your business premises, very, very visible for everyone, for the employees, and you have regular communication, whether it's through WhatsApp forums, SMS, bulk SMS platforms, consistently advising them on Ministry of Health updates and your own internal communication health updates. These are the bare minimums that we're going to need to get back to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Hitesh, for that. Now it's 12 minutes to the hour. We are getting into a Q&A session. Before we get to the Q&A session, one thing I have to thank you for is the contribution that we're making towards the COVID fund. We're encouraged by the amount that you're receiving. You find someone is donating as little as 5,000, another is donating as much as a million shillings. This is to encourage you that we continue with the same spirit, so that we can support those who are less privileged in the society, so that we can overcome this pandemic together. In case you make any payment to CAM and pay bill number, we make payment to CAM account that was established as a special account for this purpose. Please remember to send that receipts to sale.kahio@kam.co.ke. That is SAM.kam.co.ke. We're getting to our Q&A session. We have received one question about employment. And that is just check on the phone. It was sent to you. More questions, let more questions continue coming up. They're being related
Yes.
to us directly.
There's a question here. It says that the Employment Act now prohibits employers from declaring redundancies or pay cuts. Unpaid leave can be the only permitted if the employee requests, which means if the employees fail to request, employees cannot require employees to take unpaid leave. What is the update on this? So this was one of the provisions that was included in the tax amendments bill, and this was one of the issues that we were saying things were being sneaked into the bill that not necessarily should have been dealt outside as an employment issue separately from the stimulus package. My understanding is that this was not passed. This was part of the bill that was not passed when the president assented to. As we speak right now, CAM on Friday prepared a document in order to petition the office of the president and giving additional proposals on how to deal with that. So as of now, my understanding that those provisions have not passed.
Okay, thank you so much for that. We're still waiting for more questions.
Someone has raised his hand.
Yes, kindly note that our voice communication is not working at the moment. There seems to be some network issues. I would encourage that you raise the question by typing at the Q&A platform within the Zoom platform.
So we've received another question on CBR.
Yes.
The reduced CBR rate has been a good move. However, with the cash flow being the main issue, manufacturers must be provided some respite to delay payment of interest on overdraft facilities. Are we engaging with KBA to pursue this? This is from Ashish. And the message that I would like to say right now is that, yes, we have also specifically arranged for a meeting with KBA. And our understanding right now is that from the feedback we're getting from several banks, is that banks are already engaging with their customers in respect of principal waivers for the next, I think it was next 3 to 6 months, in which they're offering certain principal waivers. And I think these are obviously for cases in which prior to the announcement of the pandemic, those companies were not in a situation where they were in non-performing loans. But yes, the answer is that both we are engaging with KBA on this matter and banks are considering principal waivers.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. We're still waiting for more questions through our through the Q&A platform.
We've got a question here.
Yes.
Please ask what happens. We have filed the tax computation where we had claimed the 30 and also our accounts were signed tax rate.
Progressive, I think it's progressive tax.
Progressive. I think, Sergio, are you referring to the rebate, the power rebate?
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I believe it's the power rebate. Would you have an answer on that?
As far as this is concerned, because it's one of the proposals that had been put in the bill, and when we petitioned the president on Friday, it seems like it was not considered. What we are going to wait is the act itself to be released, because we don't have the act with us, so that we can look at whether the rebate has been removed or not. Because all what we have are acts of parliament on this matter, which we cannot prove whether they are the bona fide final act that was signed by the president or not. So, but as far as this is concerned, then it would move because the power rebate program was effective up to when the bill was assented. That's about 2 or 3 days ago. It would mean that you still benefit either prorated up to the date that the finance bill, the bill was signed 2 or 3 days ago.
Yeah, I think that would answer his question.
Yes, yes.
We have a request from a member, yes, and we will forward, in fact, we will forward the membership a copy of the tax amendments laws as was assented. We have another member saying schools have not paid suppliers this year. How can you assist as the amounts outstanding are affecting our cash flows and we are not able to pay employees and meet operational costs? I would request the attendee, we don't have details of his name, to write specifically to us in this particular matter, and we would then try and take that up and respond.
Okay, we're still waiting for more questions. We have 5 minutes to go. We're waiting for more questions from our communication department. Okay, we have been notified that there are no more other questions that are coming in. So that means you have the last chance. We have only 5 minutes to the hour. Yes, Rita Mwangi has asked, you have organized a session with KPMG analyzing the impact of COVID at various levels, which was very informative. Are we looking at another session with them or other advisors? They are a great forum for learning for business leaders and provide information to help business plan better. Indeed, we are doing 2 things with KPMG in the course of this week and next week. We are carrying out the survey that I earlier mentioned, and then we are going to have some webinar or Zoom calls. We are coming up with topics that we are going to discuss with you, our esteemed members. So some of these topics we are going to share with you as we agree with KPMG. So indeed, we have more sessions that are coming with them. Another question?
Yes, we have a comment here saying, how good are the business prepared plans when the government is appearing to be supporting, but actually not? You're looking, I think he's coming from the point of the Tax Amendment Act, of which we agree the Tax Amendment Act had a lot of things in there that were going against business in terms of raising revenue. But I think in terms of our own preparedness, our own business preparedness, whether or not the government is responding to the kind of stimulus that we're requesting, it's important that we are prepared, because we've always understood the regulatory overreach. Now, if the government decides that this is going to be a requirement in order for us to reopen manufacturing, and we fail to respond to it, then the same way we've seen regulatory overreach in the past, we'd expect the same, whether it was NEMA or KEBS or Nairobi Water for that matter. And we all had experiences from the past. It's better to stay on the right side of the situation. The intention here is that we need to remain open for our businesses. We need to have some level of sustainability.
Thank you. Another question here is, are companies expected to complete the filing of tax by 30th June, despite the social distancing, which limits auditors' activities? In fact, one issue that we addressed with the Kenya Revenue Authority is for even the monthly submissions that are done by the companies, they should be prolonged or they should be postponed because of the obvious reason that you mentioned, the social distancing, and also the skeleton team that is in the offices. So we are going to take up this concern and raise it again with the Kenya Revenue Authority.
I would like to also remind the membership that please amend your payroll tax brackets for this month. For those that have actually not paid their salaries, you're entitled now to the reduced rates. We can take one more question?
Yes, we can take one more question.
Okay.
As per IMF, investors may be looking into investing in Africa with a reduction in capital allowance. Will the other African countries not be more attractive?
Yeah, I think the reduction in the capital allowance is a big blow for investment in the country, and it's a disincentive to invest. And investors will be looking at comparative advantages in different countries. So it was a big blow, especially for those that were getting 150% investment allowances for having set up outside of the CBD. You know, you had some of the zoned areas. And there are a lot of companies that were in the process of either setting up or had made an application to set up. So I wonder how they would also react or respond to it, and whether it would cause them to reverse their decision or disincentivize them for further expansions within the country. So it was a big blow in respect to manufacturers in that regard.
The last question is, hello, what can you assist, because we are having hard times with police crossing the roadblock back from the river down outside the restricted areas. They disregard the letter provided and its expensive hosting staff away as we negotiate with the police. In my case, my staff were held up for 2 days until we sought alternative ways. What I would encourage you is, as I mentioned, that through the legal notice 50, there is a Form 1 that is supposed to be filled by the employer whereby the drivers should have that form when they are going and when they're coming back from dropping the essential goods. So if at all you face a challenge as far as the Form 1 is concerned, please link up with Preparedness directly so that we can be of assistance on this. The last question, even if it's right on time, are the changes previously proposed in the tax amendment bill on employment law, law of contract, banking law, etc. likely to be debated in Parliament this week? There have been conflicting reports on this.
I know for a fact that they were not, the provisions were not passed, but yes, these provisions are being addressed through CAM. We have presented our own positions in respect of this. I'm not certain whether they're going to be debated in Parliament this week, but we are preparing ourselves for them to start debating it, and hence we're preparing our objections to those particular provisions.
Yes. Thank you so much. We have come to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for your participation. We look forward to hosting you again next week. We're going to share with you the topic, and God bless you so much. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you very much.